Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, how's everybody doing? Still a lot of energy in this room? I understand that we are standing before a good glass of champagne. So, and I can tell you that Loreto and Nancy and I, which we will share this session, we've got a ton of energy to share with you. Very, very pleased to spend the time this afternoon talking about sustainability, and I would like to thank really Anouk and DEC for putting not only today a subject about sustainability, but as well a subject tomorrow. So it's super, super important. I decided to name my presentation, What Sustainability, What is Uniting Us? And I feel in the past 2-3 years, we've realized how our supply chain, how our value chain, and now as we embark into decarbonization, we realize how the carbon emissions have a value chain altogether. So we're really much connected there. Now, really, who are the actors that will make the change? Right? So in front of this global challenge, there is no global government. I truly believe that the two biggest actors for change are consumer and companies. And this is what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about companies that are selecting sustainability at the core of their business and really wanted to make an impact. Couple of years ago, we attended at our North American conference a great speech from the COO of SpaceX. Her name is Gwen Shootwell. She was absolutely amazing, telling about their culture. They're not afraid of failing. We've seen all the videos, right? How many times they attempt to land the rocket back, right? So, and she shared as well what it is to work with Elon. It was pretty fascinating. And then she was talking about their company and their purpose. And she did allude that it offers a plan B to humanity. I tell you that, we did all this nice walk here in Banff, Lake Louise. I tell you that plan A is what we're fighting for. Really. So this is the need for climate change, like to fight for it, is really the biggest challenge for our generation. And when I think about it, it's certainly going to be the biggest challenge for my kids, right? Now, in there is solution, as we will see. In October, there was a great Canadian, an astrophysician. His name is Hubert Reeve. I don't know if you ever heard about Hubert Reeve. Very great mind. He passed away, and I took a moment to listen at one of his podcasts. And he made a sentence there that's so simple. He said, there is no economy without ecology. So simple, right? But I feel I think the past 100 years, we forgot about this simple sentence. And this is what is sustainability about, is being able to sustain growth and make sure that we can preserve biodiversity and limit the impact of climate change. Now, can we, as companies, do we have a choice to make? Do we continue to focus on growth, or should we focusing on sustainability? And an ex-CEO of Unilever mentioned that there, right? You got to combine both to being able to be sustainable in your business development for your company. And this is very much true. And this is what we're going to be talking about here, is the possibility as we put sustainability at the core of a company to really drive a change in the strategy and a much more impact into our society. Now, we see still that companies are starting to react. But yet, today, companies are reacting because it's a compliance requirement. It became a reality. Startup cannot get funded if they're not, being able to articulate and demonstrate that they are caring for the future. Companies as well are, when they are developing in new geographies, they cannot get the contract if they're not able to present a strong sustainability engagement file. And some companies that have tried to go a bit too fast, they've been slashed because greenwashing doesn't have a space, right? So their own consumer, customers, and the market are really reacting to these events. So it's something that is there, so it's good to see that the financial world, some of these compliance are starting to make their way, but there is more to that. And it's proven that companies that are really embarking into it could really have an impact on how they are making their own company more resilient to changes, attracting more talents, and as well, really being able to sustain growth. A couple of weeks ago, I met a CEO of a Canadian company who is on the Toronto Stock Exchange, and we talked about the impact of their sustainability action plan for their own company. After all I would say, the hard financial and all the things, I could see that what passionated most this CEO was for him to share with me how it did unite his own leadership team around a common goal. Of course, the growth and the success, the financial success of their company has always been at the core, but he saw that around a subject of sustainability, it did force all the executive of the team to work together on a common goal. The previous subject about HR and human resources, attractiveness, diversity, is something that unite all of us, right? And what he was super proud to telling me about is the fact that as they deploy their program across their company, once he walked into a factory, and an employee in the factory stopped him and share. So they had organized a program within the company to say, hey, it's not only top-down, it can, the great ideas can also emerge from all across the company. And that employee that shared with the CEO a great initiative that had been able to really improve the efficiency, reduce the raw material needed. And that's what the CEO was talking to me about, right? So how this strategy to position sustainability at the core of the company really helped to reshape their companies. So at Schneider Electric, we believe that company can do more than surviving in this world. It can really put and position sustainability at the core to have an impact. And there's two principles here: do well to do good. Of course, you need to have a strong basis, a foundation of your company to being able to embark. But if you do well and you do good, you can do good to do well, right? So that's something very important. But you need to build a foundation of trust with your performance, your business, really. It needs to be part of your DNA, and it must cover all the ESG. It doesn't need to come up the first time right on all the aspects. It's a continuous improvement cycle, but it's the foundation of trust. And the second part, the second principle, which is important, is as well, you need to bring your ecosystem along with you into this. There's so much great things that are emerging in there, and don't keep that only at the executive level of your company. You can really leverage the strength of the organization and your ecosystem into it, and there's so much to be learned. Schneider Electric has been a 15 years journey. 15 years, right? So, and the most recent one is it's a 5 years plan from 2021 to 2025, but in the past it was either a 3 years or 5 years plan, always raising the bar, as I like to say. This recent one has 11 plus 1 local commitment, right? 11 global and 1 local commitment. What's changed with our plan is this time we did establish the foundation for our decarbonization against science-based target, which is really framing up the way forward and making sure that the principle and the way you're going to get there is known, transparent, and following a guidelines which it forced us. So we're going to come back to this, but this is very, very much something new. The +1 also was super important. +1 was a call for action for every country organization around the world to take local commitment that were meaningful to our community and to our reality. That's something which was super important for us, and it created 100 plans around the world. And what we decided to do is we said we're going to share that with all the countries, so all the great ideas here in Canada, We were able to see what was happening in the other side of the world and looking at the great ideas that were emerging. And our commitment is to make all of these local commitments totally accessible to the community on our website. So every quarter, we have a non-financial reporting, which keep us honest to our progress. In 2021, 2022, we were named the most sustainable company by Corporate Knights. So that's pretty fascinating because there are very serious players in that categories. But the takeaway in this is that it did not happen overnight. And despite we were named the most sustainable company, I can tell you that we're still pretty much inside the pack. We're all running the same race. We're probably a little bit ahead, but there's still so much to be done. Just sharing with you some of the highlights of our plan. Bringing everybody along, right, and how this plan was such a source of innovation for Schneider Electric. We obviously faced to say, hey, sustainability is a buzzword, but we need to build a deeper understanding of what is sustainability within our organization. We developed a super professional, fun training with different levels of certification that we were able to do with our kids, with our family. It was awesome. We decided to bring that to our partners. And now Pratap is working with the university in Toronto to bring that to make that a certification process with one of the university in Canada. So it's a great training, super accessible, but quite serious, where you are being able to be measure on your progress. We also took a very bold bet to say, you know what, by 2025 we would have reduced by 25%. No, we would have reduced by 50% the emission from our top 1,000 suppliers around the world. Very bold. I tell you that at the beginning, you have the big players, but in 1,000, you've got a lot of small and mid-sized companies that do not have people that are dedicated to work on this subject. So we had to develop training. We had to develop new tools to help making sure we are getting the right measurement. We're making it simple for the companies to work. So there's been a lot of innovation. And every quarter, we're reporting our progress towards this. So it's about helping to reduce the energy consumption and as well reduce as well the emission. And the challenge is it's all over the world. So it's been quite important. The other one that is important is we want to reduce by 800 million metric tons of CO2, helping our customers to reduce their emission by 800 million tons. So it's been fascinating. Behind that, you have big companies like Walmart, PepsiCo. Walmart as a 1 gigaton project. We've been behind this project. We have 2,000 sustainability experts around the world that are helping our customers, and Walmart has been quite of a challenge. We've got as well Melia. I don't know if Melia is around. Yeah, Melia has been working on the Walmart project. So it's very concrete, right? It's not only carbon offset kind of work behind there. There is a strategy. There is an identification of the electrification, decarbonization, and concrete action behind that. So it's been fascinating. These are 4 examples of corporations that we have been working with. And you can see for Blackstone and Equinix, the financial benefits for them, right? For Blackstone, 100 million cost reduction through sustainability strategy. Well, $100 million, it's on the balance sheet. It does start to make an impact, right? You would admit. So it's not only nice words, right? Behind that, there is certainly a strategy. There is a measurement, but there are concrete actions all over the world. Equinix, $20 million as well. And you can see as well a Canadian company, Maple Leaf Food, going into carbon neutrality and as well attaching that to science-based targets. So when companies are making this statement, they need to have the back to really share to their investors and to the community what they're doing. So, and these are some of the examples. So rapidly here, on our local commitment, Great pleasure to be the executive sponsor of our local presence. We have one of our key sustainability ambassador with Habik here in the room. So we decided to create that an employee engagement program and really to embark we have got 25 locations across the country, and we've got 26 ambassadors that are really working to having an impact locally. That has been absolutely fascinating to see. One of the things, I told you science-based target. By 2030, we need to have electrify all our sites around the world. And we've been working on that in Canada and doing the mapping of all our sites, doing audits across the country. When I did presented the decarbonization plan, electrification plan to our CFO, she took a step back when she saw the price tag. But what I really like, she said, Fred, how do we do it together? And then, and again, I give a lot of credit to Habik that have been putting that plan together, that strategy being very optimizing our investment plan there. But we're going to make it. We already have the plan to support the investment. So it's going to be a race between now and 2030. It took us 8 to 12 months to figure out the way to dimension this ask, being able to present it in a logical way to our CFO. And we were very pleased last week. We did present that to the North American sustainability team, and they were absolutely pleased to see the progress we've been able to make, and they're backing up our plan. So we're going to be making it. And this is something which, again, Schneider Electric, if we say we're going to be going on that way, if we're not making it happen, it's going to be transparent, it's going to be public. And at the end of the day, the market's going to decide if we still have the rights to be on that list, prestigious list of corporate knights. Communities, we talked a lot about communities today, something that we really care. And that's the strength of having 21 locations, 25 locations across the country, really much engaged. We're super engaged as well with the Indigenous Clean Energy. That is training every year energy catalysts across the country that are tackling real projects for communities across the country. But there's so much to be done on that front, and we're very pleased to do it. We're very much convinced that the world needs more impact companies. As I said, it's a journey, and we need to look at it that being very humble into it and saying, you know what, there is so much to learn. There is no recipe. There was no recipe given to us. We are the generation that are really starting to tackle this, and we just need to be open-minded. We know it's a serious subject, which is treated as such by the communities. But there is a space for innovation, there's space for growth, and behind sustainability, there is a race against waste. There is a race towards more efficient use of our energy and resources, and we strongly believe that the companies that will embark into it will be tomorrow the most profitable companies that will shape the world. So with this, it's going to be time for us to start our panel discussion, and I will invite Nancy and Loreto to join me on stage. All right, so thanks for joining. Good to have you on stage. So Nancy Foran, right, who is president and founder of ESG Partner. And we'll get a chance to know more about yourself and your company, Nancy. We also have Loreto Duffy-Meyers, who is the project manager of Caribbean Hotel Tourism Association. Thank you both for being with us. And Loreto, when I'm thinking about you, and we had a chance to speak last week, very, very pleased that you come along here with your delegation. Super happy to get to know more about the reality in the Caribbean, and we'll have a great session. So what I would like both of you to do now is, introduce yourself, introduce your role, and after that we're going to get into the dialogue, right? So, good.
I guess I got the short straw. I get to start. No, thank you very much for inviting this conversation here this afternoon. I founded ESG Partners a little over 3 years ago, and did so for the exact reasons that we've been hearing about all day today. It's looking to create a conversation and to give some real credibility to the conversation around sustainability. So when we're talking about this topic, what do we mean? And we sort of have this, perhaps a crass way to talk about it in our office. It's not about hugging trees and saving bunnies. It's really about creating the business case for sustainability that will allow us to move forward into a net zero world in a just, fair, and equitable way. So we are talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. We are talking about Indigenous rights. We are talking about reduction in carbon and in biodiversity, and you can't have carbon reduction if you don't have biodiversity. We went on the walk at lunch. You can't help but look around and go, wow, we have an opportunity to create a world that preserves all that we see around us here. So I get very passionate about this topic. So 3 years ago when I sat back and said, what can I do? What can I do to be part of this solution? And what kind of a team can I build around me to be part of this solution? And I think we all have a role to play within our sphere of influence to say, what skills do we have? I come from a background of finance and governance. So I'm a chartered director, I'm a CPA, and I surround myself with a team of environmental and social scientists and data scientists, because we need to be able to measure this stuff, we need to be accountable, and I'm sure that's probably what we'll get into here. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Nancy. And Loreto?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Excuse me. I seem to be wearing two hats here because my badge says I'm with the Private Financing Network, and while my photo says I'm also with Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association. But yes, I have managed projects on behalf of the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association, and I am a board member on the Caribbean Alliance for Sustainable Tourism, which is the green arm of the CHTA. I'm also an advisor with the Private Financing Advisory Network, which looks at projects which have obviously a climate change and a climate adaptation, climate resilience component to them. But I have been involved in sustainable tourism for far longer than I even care to remember. And, we're talking about, listening to what you're talking about, ESG and that. And yes, in tourism, we seem to have a proliferation of certification programs. There's Green Key, Green Leaf, Green Deal, Green Globe, Green World, Green this, Green that. There's everywhere. The Global Sustainable Tourism Council, of which at one point in time I was on their accreditation panel, and the whole idea is that the certification programs have to fall within their certification guidelines for the tourism sector. And I have to say, yes, there's hotels. In fact, at one point in time, going back, I'd say, into the early 90s, the Caribbean had 61% of the green hotels in the world. And in actual fact, Barbados had more per square mile than any other country in the world. Now, for some reason, we seem to have dropped off on that. And a lot of it, I think, has to do with the perceived cost of sustainability, right? This is one of the things that we have to look at. And the second thing is, which is one of my pet peeves, which is how can you call somebody sustainable and how can you certify a hotel that is denying access to the local people to that beach? And this has become a major problem with developers coming into countries. And, a lot of developers coming into a country when that country happens to be on their knees, after, maybe a financial meltdown, or whether it came after COVID, and the government's giving in to these large developers, and the first thing they do is they put up barriers to the local people getting on the beach. Now, these are some of the things that we have to be very careful with, and we have to start looking to see whether that is sustainable or not.
Yeah, good point, and we'll have a chance to. And you talk about is profitability and sustainability can match. We're going to be able to get back to it, but what we would like to take a moment is to look at there's best practice out there. You have been involved in many projects, beyond this ambition. they are companies that are really striving to have an impact. So can you both share some of your best practice you've seen in the work that you're doing and that everybody can benefit from here?
Okay, I'll start again. Instead of waiting for that. So I'm based actually in Halifax, Nova Scotia. So I'm primarily working with companies that are based in Atlantic Canada. And then we also work with a number of organizations in the Caribbean. So what we're finding on sort of our side of the country is a lot of the best practices we are seeing is around engaging in the conversation. So we're a little bit behind, if you will, in terms of education capacity for understanding what this is, how can we be held accountable, what does even environmental, social, and governance mean? How can a company actually integrate it into its strategy? So we're having a lot of conversations around the education piece. When I sort of think about what our company's doing that I'm seeing that's really great practice, it kind of touches a little bit on what you had said in the opening remarks. It's holding companies accountable. So a lot of the clients I'm working with are SMEs. So they are accountable to their customers. And it's those larger corporates that are starting to push this down to say, you know what, we care about this stuff, and we need our supply chain to care about it as well. Procurement processes are starting to ask for some of this stuff, which is driving behavior. I think the public sector still has a lot that it can do in terms of how it supports some companies, but that's a whole other discussion for half a day, I'm sure. But the steps are being taken, and we're seeing all this happening. It is happening at the higher level, the corporate level, the Schneider Electric level, like larger companies. But once that gets pushed down the supply chain, once that starts to drive the conversation around partnerships and collaboration, that's fantastic. Another big piece that's happening as well, which is so important, and this could be because regulation's starting to catch up and support a lot of this, but companies are starting to talk about collaboration as opposed to competition. And I think that's the definite way forward. We can't all do this if we're trying to compete against each other, and we need to open up the conversations and create those opportunities to do so. You don't have to give away trade secrets, but you do need to enable conversation. And that's where I think the public sector is doing a fantastic job of bringing stakeholders together to start to talk and break down those barriers, which I think is so important. Yeah, long-winded conversation or answer, but
yeah, it's so true. It does resonate a lot to what we observe. So, Loreto, on your side, so I know you've been quite involved in projects in the Caribbean, and you've seen a lot of impact or challenges as well. But what are the best practice you can share with us?
Going back, I think, to the second phase of the CHENACT project, which was the Caribbean Hotel Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Action Program that I managed. And the second phase covered in depth Barbados, Bahamas, Jamaica. The initial pilot program had covered Barbados and some of the other, a few hotels in nearly all of the CARICOM countries. But the second phase, we had some financing available for grants. So we gave 5 grants of $50,000 each to 3 hotels in Jamaica and 2 in the Bahamas. And one of the hotels in the Bahamas, the Paradise Island Beach Resort, we gave $50,000 and they matched it with $60,000. So they made an investment of $110,000 on new air conditioning units, new lighting systems, just general, energy efficiency wherever they possibly could with that $110,000. And their bill, their light bill, which was in the region of $520,000 US dollars per year, came down to $250 in 1 year. I think the savings were something in the region of 61%. Wow. We gave another $50,000 to a small hotel on Andros Island. And again, they put in solar hot water system, and they put in some kitchen equipment, etc. And again, because they did not have the $50,000 at the time to match it, what we'd given them, they made an agreement that whatever savings they made, they would reinvest in energy efficiency or renewables when the time comes. And again, the savings were absolutely significant. The last time I checked, I think it was around about 40% savings they were making. So, we have discovered that where the financing is available to small hotels. That, you know, and I think it was talked about, I think has been mentioned before, you know, that when you can provide the right kind of financing to small hotels or to any kind of, well, it doesn't even have to be small hotels, but when you can provide the right kind of financing, that significant savings can be made. That it's not just, and you know, unfortunately, the lenders, the traditional type lenders, the bankers and that, don't want to lend for energy efficiency because they claim that there's too much of a human interference in this. They will give you happily the money to put on a PV system because that can be measured. But the energy efficiency, they say, oh, well, you come to us and tell us that, you know, you can make 30% or 50% savings. That never happens. Well, it does happen if it's done properly. But what it requires is a lot of training and monitoring. There's no sense that you going out and training your staff now and telling them that you make, just because we've put in energy efficient lighting doesn't mean you can leave them on all the time. We've got to make sure that we put the right systems in. So when the person leaves the room, the lights go out, or when they open the door, the air conditioning goes off. We've got to do it properly, and we've got to train the staff, and we've got to continue to train them. And we have to monitor. We have to make sure that every day somebody is reading the meters and somebody is logging the information, and that somebody, or if you happen to have one of the fancy back-of-house systems where, you know, you can get a red light when somebody is overusing the water or the energy usage has gone up for whatever reason. But it's all a question of monitoring and training.
Yeah, thank you very much for both of you. I think your two example, what's coming out of this is that it's possible. It's possible to have an impact. It requires leadership. Yeah. But we need to embark everyone along because it's a transformation, and any transformation requires, for sure, leadership, but it requires us to make sure that we train, we collaborate to make it possible. Now, just looking at you know, this climate change and the more sustainable world that is in front of us, and let's face it, it's quite of a challenge still in front of us, right? So what is keeping you awake at night when you think about all the things we got to do, and how do we sort it out to being able to move on and continue to strive for change? So
what keeps me awake at night is that we're not moving fast enough.
Yeah.
We heard a little bit this morning that, you know, we can't just flick a switch and expect us to be all in sort of this, you know, renewable world and everyone is, you know, coming along and we have solutions. It just doesn't happen that way. But we do have to work faster than what we are. And I think that's where regulation has a fantastic role to play in helping to support this conversation and help to create sort of a more equitable sandbox so we all know what we're playing in. Early adopters are, you know, might be able to get a competitive advantage by being an early adopter, but quite often there can also be a disadvantage. I went to a Responsible Investment Forum last year, and we talked a lot about the investment community and the investment community that is putting certain barriers in place for what activity they engage in because they want to enforce a certain behavior, try to create this change we want to see. They may be at a disadvantage because they're raising the bar. And you know, you start to think about it and you think, well, you can talk about the competitive advantage all you want, but we need to have sort of that level playing field, but we do need to move it along a lot quicker. So that's what I worry about. And going hand in hand with that, I think in some of your opening comments you had mentioned this, companies are worried. They're worried about greenwashing. They're worried about overstating their commitments for fear of not being able to back it up. So it maybe prevents them from doing anything. Or now we're hearing a lot of, you know, green hushing. Don't say anything just in case. So you're either overstating or you're understating, but we're not getting a clear read on what's going on. So it's just to have that acceptance that we're all in this together, we're all trying to move this forward, and we don't have all the answers, but my goodness, we have to move faster. That's all. It really does keep me awake.
It does resonate a lot, Nancy, for sure. Loreto, for you?
Well, what keeps me awake at night time is the impact climate change is having on the small islands. You know, I don't want to hear anybody else saying that, talking about this hurricane belt, the entire Atlantic is a hurricane belt now, as is the Pacific. And it doesn't matter how far south you are or how far north you are. Hurricanes are impacting everybody. Islands and countries in South America are getting hit, by hurricanes when they never, ever expected it before. And the other thing is, it doesn't take a hurricane to hurt a little island like Barbados. We only need a system. It doesn't even have to have a name. And in recent times, we've been getting these freak storms where we're getting, lightning strikes, 15 lightning strikes every couple of seconds, these kind of things. And it's damaging our grids. It's doing a lot of damage. Right now in Barbados, the last few days, we have been under flood warning constantly. And it's impacting places like Guyana, which are always flooding, but it's getting worse than ever. Trinidad has been getting lashed. The northern islands, the small little islands like Anguilla and like St. Kitts and Nevis and poor Dominica, whatever is wrong with Dominica and Haiti, those islands are just, everything that comes along seems to get some of those guys. So the thing about it is that we're the ones who are contributing the least to climate change, and yet we're the ones who are suffering the most. And, our Prime Minister, Mia Mottley, who I'm sure you've all heard of, is doing a phenomenal job of trying, to get the bigger countries to start to recognize this. Because the loss and damage that we are facing, it's becoming horrendously difficult for us. When every year you're facing some kind of travesty, and it doesn't even have to be a hurricane. We've also had earthquakes, we've also had volcanoes, pandemic, all kind of things that has putting huge stresses on little islands. And for them to get back up and try and get back up every single year, knowing that you have debts to pay to big countries, right? And these are some of the things that really keep me awake at night time, trying to figure out how are we going to grow when we have all these stresses on us all the time.
Can I just say one follow-up thing, not to hog the stage, but that exact, so that's so important at the country level, but even at the company level. So I'm Nova Scotia. In early June, I almost lost my home because of the forest fire. And so we watched the fire happen all around us. We were lucky because we live on water. We were protected. That's great. 6 weeks later, I woke up and I looked out of my window and I thought, oh, it looks like, my dock has just floated away. No, it's because the water had risen so much that it almost hit our foundation of our house. So in a 6-month span, we almost lost our house from fire and then almost from flood. That's on a personal level, so imagine what that does to insurance rates and those sorts of things. But businesses in the community, they did not have any kind of resilience or scenario planning in place, so they weren't ready for it. So small businesses literally burned to the ground, meaning all of those employees are out of work. So, and the same thing happened when the floods happened as well. Mind you, they retreated a bit faster than having to rebuild from the fires. But just think about that from a resilience perspective. And then, the province kicked in a lot of money. The federal government did as well. How long can that last, right? I mean, we're already seeing inflation at record levels. This can't continue. Our neighbor 2 houses down, he already lost his insurance for any kind of water damage because of how the water system comes through. And he had significant damage. These are the real issues that businesses and countries and individuals are having to deal with. So when we start talking about, how are we going to fund things, how can we not, right? Sorry, I didn't mean to go on a tirade there, but it's just so important,
perfect.
right?
It's perfect.
But you
I
are
need a
right,
big piece
though.
of duct tape, I think.
But it's correct, though, because even in the Caribbean now, one of the problems we have with insurance, and certainly we've raised it in Barbados on numerous occasions, the insurance companies will not cover damages unless it's a named storm. Now, this has really had a massive impact. As I said, you get a little island like Barbados, we don't need a named storm to wipe us off the face of the earth. We've had some systems, a good tropical depression can come across the islands now and take the roofs off houses. And it's happened to us on numerous occasions in recent times. So you go to your insurance company says, no, it's not a named storm. So there's one. We also have the Caribbean Catastrophe Insurance Program, the CRIF, CCRIF. And the CRIF now is an insurance company. It's basically which covers loss and damage to the islands. And when a system or a storm does hit the islands, they are able to go to the CRIF and the country will get some funding back. But, I mean, in most cases, it's really not enough. So what do you do when the insurance will not cover the damage to your home? Obviously, government has got to step in. And I even heard there recently from some friends of mine who own properties now way over the other side of the Caribbean, in the small islands of San Andreas and Providencia, where the insurance companies are saying they're not going to insure them any longer. And here now, they are facing anything that comes into the Gulf there now is, or not the Gulf, the southwestern Caribbean. They're at the mercy of these things. You've got places like Aruba, Bonaire, Curacao, the ABC Islands, that never, ever, ever encountered hurricanes or really bad storms. These are dry islands. They have cactus growing on them. And now all of a sudden, they are absolutely inundated with rainmakers. So it is becoming a huge problem for small islands.
Yeah, I think both of your sharing resonate a lot on how Anouk started the day, right? She was saying the why. She was related about the why, and I think we've got two great examples of the impact of climate change to our personal lives, our community. And there is a financial aspect to it, right? So it's probably the hidden part but it is, there is a cost to our economy, all of these, and now we are waking up after 100 years of forgetting about the fact that if we are able to grow, to develop our economy, our society, well, Mother Earth and the ecology that is supporting it is reacting now. So how do we accelerate? What can we change? It's a big question, Nancy. But
It's huge. Again, I always focus on what my little sphere of influence could be. And I think it's, we talk a lot about the financial impact of all of these things. But, back at COP26 in 2021, and there was a lot of conversation about how much was committed towards this transition to a net zero world. I think it's like $130 billion, I think it was. I don't know if it was a B or a T. It was either billion or trillion. Anyway, they're getting these numbers that start. But, think about the amount of money that was committed globally for this transition to a net zero world. And yet the question that continues to be asked, and it also gets asked in the Caribbean a lot, is where is it? How do we mobilize that finance? How do we get that money into these conversations, into those pitches that we heard today and you'll hear tomorrow? How do you start to get this finance in the organizations that will accelerate us more quickly? So that's a big part of it. And I think the way to do that is we have to make sure that we have good, transparent processes. It's right back to ESG, as you might not be surprised. It's not about reporting, but it's about making sure that we can be transparent and open about what we're doing and how we're doing it. And I think that will help create that environment where there is sort of almost comfort in being able to invest in some of these different technologies that we don't have the past to be able to predict how it's going to resonate. I don't know when we talked about this, but even thinking about how do you start to quantify or look at what is going to be a return on an investment in something that we can't yet predict. So, start to put an investment into more sustainable infrastructure for an event that may or may not happen. It might happen in 20 years, 5 years, or 2 months. We don't know. How do you start to quantify the benefit of, lowering emissions if you don't have the data to be able to track it to show how much money you're saving? So it's all of those sorts of things. So it's complex, but I think it's being transparent, it's having the data, it's being able to start to quantify some of this stuff.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And I think the other thing about it is that we have to start thinking outside the box. What the hell else could happen? And, we have a typical example. I won't say a typical example, but a great example was the volcano in St. Vincent erupted last year. Barbados is 100 miles to the east of St. Vincent. We got all the ash. Can you imagine the cost of cleaning that up? We woke up one day and here is the island blanketed in black ash. 2 years later, we're still finding it. If you haven't been up the top of your wardrobe recently, I guarantee you there's going to be some of it up there. And it cost a fortune to have it cleaned up. We have another problem. We have sargassum. And this thing here has become a massive problem for the tourism sector in the Caribbean. And it not only was it originally this coming from the Sargasso Sea, which was a gyre in the Atlantic, we now have this other stuff, and another one, a type of seaweed, which is coming out of the Amazon, and it's coming out of the Orinoco, and there's another bloom that's coming out of the Mississippi. And all of these things together now just seem to be growing and growing and growing. A small example is there's a hotel on my road which spent $100,000 US unbudgeted in cleaning up the Sargasso. And I mean, the beach is it might be the length of this room, right? That's the kind of money. So when you've got places like Mexico and you've got places like, Central America, where all of this stuff is heading in that direction and it's nowhere else, it's just piling up and piling up and piling up. It is absolutely, the smell is dreadful. They have to evacuate people. They're spending a fortune. And then you clean it up, and then the next day, there it is back there again. So these are sort of things that, we've got to a point now where we're saying, exactly like, what else can happen? What else can we think of that we have to prepare ourselves for? We are well prepared for pandemics, and we are well prepared for fires, and we're well prepared for, say, mass casualties. But like we've said one day, well, what was to happen if 2 jumbo jets collided over somewhere like Barbados? Where are we going to put all of those bodies? Right? And I mean, it's a very serious question. You have, call it 350, 400 people in each plane. You have now to find places to put 800 bodies, because every single one of them has to have an autopsy to prove that it was a plane crash that killed them, and not that this was a terrorist act. So, how many countries are we going to have to bring in together to say, how are you going to help us out? Can you help us with all of these? Can you find somewhere for us to put them? And where are we going to get all these forensic scientists to come in and do this? So, we are so small that we have to start really thinking beyond what we are used to try to make ourselves resilient to just about anything. And that in itself is a major struggle.
Yeah, so here from your, what you just shared, so there's so much learning in the past 100 years about the impact of climate change. We've got now the science. To your point, we need to anticipate the worst now, to plan our budget, plan the future. Then we're going to need to spend time as well to say, hey, how could we at the collective level? And that's a big challenge, right? To your point, we need all the countries to embark into it. So there is the UN is rallying the community around it, but still a lot of things that needs to be done, especially by the companies. But you talked about earlier, and now let's look at the company level. Could we combine profitability and sustainability? Is that how, if we put ourselves at a company level, and you did share some of these examples, and as well, Nancy is. You are the CEO, you're the CFO of a company. How do you relate these engagement to your P&L at the end of the day?
Well, some of what we're starting to see, and I don't know if you're all feeling this as well, but customers are actually dropping suppliers who aren't paying attention to this stuff. So right there's a hit to your income statement. Also, you had shared one story about some cost savings from using some of your solutions, but I have one story which I can share with you because we talk about it all the time. You're probably all familiar with Labatt Brewery, or Olin's Brewery, and so their director of operations, I sit on a board with him, and we were just having a conversation one time, and he shared with me a real story. They prioritized water consumption as their key issue that they were going to focus on. By focusing on that resource, which is a limited, natural resource, it was starting to impede their ability to expand, because increasingly more jurisdictions are having a water shortage. So they're really focused on that. By focusing on it, they were able to save, gosh, I wish I had the slide here with me, but I want to say it was like 30,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools every year of water, which translated into direct cost savings And part of the way they were able to get there, so that's also another hit. Part of how they were able to get there is they engaged their workforce. So these were the guys who were, and predominantly they mostly are guys. They're working on that too, though. But anyway, so they're on the shop floor and trying to take, how can we do better? And they came up with these really great solutions, and I can, as we're having our glass of champagne, I can share them with you. But what it ended up doing is it made everybody in that company understand what they were doing, why they were doing it, and feeling connected to the why, right? And so they actually were able to finally, the first time in about 3 years, take down this help wanted sign that was outside of one of their plants that has been up there forever because they couldn't find people who want to work there. Now they're able to finally really engage with the workforce because people want to work there because they see themselves as being important. So they've actually reduced their recruitment costs. They've helped with their retention. Again, definite savings to the bottom line. So whenever we do talk about some of these things in terms of, do you have to focus on profit or sustainability? They have to go hand in hand. They do, and they absolutely do. We just need more data to be able to start to quantify this. It's not really 28 minutes. No.
How much? I was driving through.
Another couple of minutes.
Okay, good.
I can give you one of the best examples I ever saw about how a hotel engaged the staff in trying to reduce energy and water. A large hotel in Montego Bay, they had a big wooden pig that they called the energy hog. And what they did every night was they got the security guards to go around all of the offices, all of the kitchens, etc., everywhere, to see if anybody left lights on, air conditioning, whatever. And every time that you left a light on, there was a red tick beside your name. And one day, at the end, every day, every last day of every month, the staff had to line up. The heads of the departments lined up. And the manager would walk down with the energy hog under his arm. And he told me how they were shaking in their boots because it was the worst shame of all, was to be presented with this energy hog. And he said this particular day he came down and he presented it to the executive chef. And the chef got so mad, he got the meat cleaver and he lopped the ear off the pig. And this is the reason why that pig is still there to this day with the ear lopped off. And he said that was the one way, he said, nobody in that hotel wanted to see that thing because that was in there for a month in your office, reminding you. And he said he has never seen anything work as well as that particular way of engaging staff. And there was no sort of, like, you could call it a stick, I suppose, but there was no carrot necessary, just nobody wanted the shame of that thing,
Thanks for sharing, Loreto. So I understand the call for champagne is very strong, right? But then I noticed that every panel finished with asking the panelists to share a last thought or last takeaway for the audience that people can bring back home. So.
I want you to start this time.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it, when you're going into hotels yourself or when you are visiting places, be conscious of the fact that, sustainability is so important to all of us. As they say, leave only footprints. Don't take anything. When you go into your hotel, like at least when you're walking out of your room, turn off the air conditioner. Turn off the lights. If the hotel itself doesn't have a system, try and you yourself contribute a little. I mean, I see in the hotel here, yes, they have a towel reuse program, which is great. I have no problem whatsoever hanging up my towels and using them again tomorrow. It doesn't bother me. And I think, you consider when you're at home, you do the same thing. So I think, doing your little part for sustainability, I think is very important.
Yeah, and I guess just building on that, so thank you for going first. And so it's not just an individual thing, but it is, all of us have a role to play. And it's not just a company thing, because every company has a role to play. It's not just a government issue that has to be solved, although there is a role to play there. It really is all, the entire ecosystem has to work together to be able to solve this, because it's, I've never seen an onion with more layers than this whole conversation, like from every person who talked today to, what we all have to go away now and do. So, yeah, it's going to take everyone to do this, but we can do it.
Good. Hey, a big round of applause to our panelists. Thank you very much.
That was excellent.